So a few days ago, the Vatican Dicastery for Evangelization released a mascot character. This mascot character will, Luce, will appear at the Lucca Cartoon Convention in Italy, the Expo 2025 convention in Osaka, and will be a mascot character for the 2025 Jubilee year. The mascot has generated a certain amount of controversy online. A lot of people are saying a lot of things, and a lot of people don't know what's going on. So, as someone who is a Catholic historian, and as someone who is half Macanese, I have a certain amount of background in the East. I have a different perspective on this, maybe, than most people, and maybe a better understanding of what the intention was and what's going on. So, when St. Francis Xavier arrived in Japan, he arrived in the city of Kagoshima on August 15th, 1549. Only a certain number of Catholics are going to know that. What very, very few people know is that he arrived on a pirate ship. And it's an interesting story. Part of what happened was that it was, for the Portuguese traders, it was an off-season. It was known that there would be typhoons in the seas between China and Japan. And it was simply just not the right time to sail. But the saint persisted. He wanted to sail. And so he found a pirate, a Chinese pirate or a Japanese pirate, I'm not quite sure which, who would be willing to take him across the seas. And they got out onto the seas, and the seas became turbulent. The Portuguese were right, in a sense, to be wary of traveling at that time. The seas became so turbulent that the Chinese pirate was considering turning back to China, until Xavier reminded him that if he did so, he wouldn't be paid. And so the pirate was forced to take him to Japan. A lot of things happened along the way. The seas were so turbulent they couldn't land, but then eventually they did land. They did make that landing at Kagoshima on August 15th, 1549, on the feast of Our Lady of the Assumption. They landed exactly at the right place, at the right time, under the direction of Our Lady. Under the direction of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Everything worked out perfectly, even though it didn't seem like it would. Now, later in his ministry, St. Francis Xavier was trying to figure out how to get the priests that he had with him to integrate into Japanese culture. And one of the ideas he came up with was that instead of wearing their European priestly vestments, they would instead wear orange robes. Now, the reason he decided on this was because the Buddhists in Japan already wore orange robes. And so Xavier's thinking was that maybe by adopting a religious practice that already exists in the islands that is just clothing, maybe this will help with evangelization. Now, ultimately, the decision was made, but it ultimately simply caused confusion, because Japanese people then thought that the Christians were another type of Buddhist, when they were, in fact, a different religion. And eventually, Xavier... Actually, no, it wouldn't be Xavier. It was later Jesuit missionaries in Japan who had to make the decision, okay, maybe this is an aspect of Japanese culture that can't be adopted because it causes too much confusion. When I look at something like this, I look at it from a historical lens. The truth is that we don't know whether Luce is going to be like the pirate ship or like the orange robes. We don't know whether it's going to turn out exactly as Our Lady wishes, or whether it's going to turn out as something that causes a great deal of confusion. We can't know that ahead of time, in the same way that St. Francis Xavier couldn't know it ahead of time. These things can only be borne out over the course of years. We're going to have to see. The Expo 2025 Osaka is scheduled for April 13th to October 13th in Osaka, Japan. Even after that, we're not going to know the fruits that this event produces. We're not going to know the people who will be inspired by this event until years after. It's important to take a long-term view on these things. And I think to express a bit of wonder that at the miracles that have occurred, and perhaps a sense of hope at the miracles that will occur in the future. Thank you for listening.